Hi friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. So it's pretty much confirmed by this point that Ahsoka Tano will be appearing in one of the next episodes of The Mandalorian. Today I thought it'd be a good idea to take a look at Ahsoka Tano's past and what kind of Jedi she was before she was kicked out of the Order, and then use that knowledge to try to understand how she will interact with Baby Yoda when she sees him the first time. Now, Ahsoka Tano became a Jedi during a very turbulent time in Jedi history. The beginning of the Separatist Crisis and the creation of the Clone Army pulled the Jedi unwittingly into a conflict that they were completely unprepared for. Young Padawan like Ahsoka Tano were pushed straight into combat and oftentimes given command positions that controlled entire wings of starfighters or even entire fleets and legions of clone troopers. Ahsoka Tano was definitely a very gifted individual. She had to be to keep up with her own master, who was Anakin Skywalker. The two were actually a really good pair. They were both extremely powerful in the Force and also pretty reckless at the same time. Ahsoka Tano would perform quite well throughout the entire war, and in many ways she exceeded the expectations most would have for such a young Jedi. Especially during the later years of the war, the Jedi were stretched quite thin by the requirements of the war, and many Padawan were pressed into service unprepared and died as a result. In my opinion, Ahsoka Tano's experience of the war was enough to give her a promotion to Jedi Knight. Obviously, in the midst of the Clone Wars, a lot of ceremony and procedures were postponed, but Obi-Wan Kenobi received a similar battlefield promotion after he defeated Darth Maul as a Padawan. And so, when the Jedi Order wrongfully accused Ahsoka Tano of bombing the Jedi Temple, the young Togruta was still just the Padawan. This whole event was terrible for Ahsoka. She was chased into the Coruscant underworld by clone troopers, stunned, and brought back in front of a Jedi tribunal, which kicked her out of the Order, and then she was almost sentenced to death for treason against the Republic. Luckily, Anakin Skywalker was able to clear her name at the last moment, but the effect of this entire trial turned Ahsoka away from the Jedi Order completely. She could no longer trust them, and who can blame her? Now, the Jedi would try to bribe Ahsoka Tano back into the Order by claiming that this whole situation was just a trial for her Jedi knighthood. Ahsoka, however, sees through the BS olive branch they had given her and decides to leave the Jedi forever. Now, technically speaking, Ahsoka Tano would leave the Order as a Padawan, which kind of disqualifies her as a teacher of the Force in the Jedi point of view. Now, I don't think that's going to really affect her relationship with the Baby Yoda, but technically speaking, she's not even a Jedi anymore. And, had she stayed in the Order or even, accepted the Jedi Order's request to come back, she would have been a full-blown Jedi Knight. And perhaps a few months later, had Order 66 not happened, she would have had her own Padawan too. We have seen Ahsoka mentor and guide groups of younglings before. She seems to have a very natural way with kids that makes us think she'd be a terrific master. But that was, of course, before the whole accusation for the Jedi Temple thing, and that really shook the foundation of her faith in the Jedi Order. When Ahsoka Tano rejects the Jedi Order, she also stops believing in their teachings as well. This is the very belief system that shaped her entire life. This was the only thing she ever knew. But luckily, she was still quite young and in her teens, and therefore open-minded and flexible enough to change and adapt to a real life. So when she sets off from the Jedi Temple that one last time, it was also the first time she was truly free and independent as well. Ahsoka Tano found life outside the temple quite difficult at first. She would journey down into the Coruscant underworld to level 1313 and mingle with a bunch of normies. While her Jedi training prepared her for the most difficult parts of life, her lack of a real job and real-life experiences made the more mundane aspects of life a bit more difficult. Ahsoka would return to help the Jedi right before Order 66 during the Siege of Mandalore, and then she would go back into hiding with the rest of the surviving Jedi. It was during this time when Jedi like Ahsoka Tano, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Cal Kestis, and Caleb Dune would face their greatest challenge, and that was seeing injustice happen before them, but not being able to do anything for fear of revealing their Jedi nature. Ahsoka Tano very likely noticed the limitations being a former Jedi gave her in the Imperial era. She, like many in the Jedi Order, never had a choice when it came to joining the Order. She, like many Jedi Padawan, was born with the gift of the Force and recruited from a very young age. She never experienced anything outside of the Order, and now that she was finally living a normal life, she was probably experiencing and noticing a lot of things that she had missed out on, like having a family or real friends. This makes me believe that Ahsoka Tano would be against training babies and young children like Baby Yoda in the way of the Jedi or the Force. It's actually quite a common mentality adopted by survivors of the Jedi Purge. Padawan Cal Kestis had managed to get his hands on a Jedi holocron with a list of Force-sensitive children from every corner of the galaxy. Cal ultimately destroyed the holocron because he believed that all of the children on the list had a right to choose for themselves what they wanted to do with their life. It's also a very millennial and Generation Z point of view, but given the current state of the Jedi Order, it's probably a good idea to stay away from them as much as possible. It's not to say that Ahsoka Tano would avoid young Force sensitives. Shortly after Order 66, Ahsoka Tano would journey to the planet of Tabeska, where she would basically work for a family while hiding from the Empire. She would actually discover that one of the younger members of the family was Force sensitive. She didn't try to train the child, but she warned the family to keep her hidden from the Empire and their Sith Inquisitors. Her most important focus in this case was keeping that child safe, because no matter where she went in the galaxy, trouble would sort of find her. And since she had the skills and powers to create change, she didn't hesitate in getting involved in local resistance movements, which ultimately led her to Senator Bail Organa and becoming a part of the larger galactic resistance. And that was pretty natural because Ahsoka Tano had a pretty good moral compass. She would always try to help people in need throughout her entire career, no matter what it might cost her. And although she never had a Padawan of her own, she would train at least one Jedi in her career, and that was Ezra Bridger. Ezra was an older teen when he decided to become a Jedi, and it was completely his choice. The lesson that we do see Ahsoka Tano give to Ezra Bridger was relatively anti-Jedi in nature. She basically takes the Kyber crystal out of Ezra's lightsaber and then teaches him to fight without it using the Force alone. While the lesson itself is not controversial, the Jedi were told to never surrender their sabers and also taught to heavily rely on them for battle. So as far as we can tell, Ahsoka Tano by this point was already really thinking outside of the box and going counter towards what traditional Jedi would teach. Ezra Bridger would lose his own master, Kanan Jarrus, and then disappear off into the unknown region after sacrificing himself to defeat Grand Admiral Thrawn during the liberation of Lothal. Ahsoka Tano would chase after Ezra and try to locate him in the years after. It seems like by 9 ABY, which would be around 4 years after, Ahsoka Tano has returned from the unknown region, and, well, we don't really know what happens to Ezra Bridger. It's unknown if she found Ezra or if she continued training him. The young man, in my opinion, had reached Jedi Knight status through his own actions and probably didn't need a master anymore, but Ahsoka Tano is there to teach him if he wants it. So taking in all the information we now know about Ahsoka Tano and what she's been up to and what she's most likely doing by 9 ABY, how will she interact with the Baby Yoda and Din Djarin? Well, first, Ahsoka clearly would find the Baby Yoda adorable, like we all do. She even found a soft spot for Jabba the Hutt's runt, who was a lot less cute. Ahsoka Tano would also be familiar with the Mandalorian people, even though Din Djarin might be a part of Death Watch, or at least a subgroup of Death Watch that tried to kill Ahsoka several times. I believe that Ahsoka Tano will try her best to help Din Djarin, though, and protect the Baby Yoda. But the small child is clearly still too young to receive any real training. We're not even sure if the Baby Yoda can speak or can understand instruction. But Ahsoka Tano does have one advantage that Mando Dad does not, and that is her ability to communicate with another Force user through the Force itself. This kind of precedes language in many ways. It's more instinctual and based on telepathy. Perhaps Ahsoka Tano can teach Baby Yoda some more basic skills like masking its own presence in the Force. Now, the Mandalorian hasn't run into any Inquisitors yet. We're not really sure if any of them survived the Galactic Civil War, but it's probably a good idea to keep Baby Yoda's Force sensitivity a secret for now. There are also basic telekinesis skills meditating that are all considered the cornerstones of being a Force user that Ahsoka Tano could teach. Baby Yoda is probably too young at this point to go on his own gathering. This is an important part of Jedi culture where they basically get their own Kyber crystal and build their first lightsaber. It should also be mentioned that Alum, the world that most of these younglings would go to find Kyber crystals, was strip mined by the Empire, so that's not really possible anymore. What's probably even more likely is that Ahsoka Tano will recognize that Baby Yoda probably needs another few decades to grow before we can really properly do anything, which is kind of brilliant from Disney's standpoint. right now Baby Yoda will kind of be this cute, adorable thing for the Mandalorian to protect. And then fast forward like a century in Star Wars time and maybe 2 or 3 years in our time, you'll have a baby or teenage Yoda movie, which will probably be the most successful thing that the Disney era of Star Wars has created. Because let's be honest, the biggest problem that Disney faces right now is that it hasn't been able to create any characters that are as beloved as the characters from the original and prequel trilogies. So there you have it, guys. Those are some of my thoughts on Ahsoka Tano. I think she is clearly no longer a Jedi. Many say that she is a gray Jedi, and I believe that if she does teach the Baby Yoda, she'll try to teach the little guy a little more balanced view of the Force, which maybe will incorporate some more interesting things like, I don't know, Sith lightning. But anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button down below. Also, comment and let me know what you think is going to happen. As usual, thanks for joining us today. If you're watching this, you are Generation Tech.